The story of Heaven's Gate is one of the most chilling and tragic in modern history. What began as a small spiritual movement grew into a notorious cult that ended in a mass suicide in 1997. Led by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, Heaven's Gate believed that salvation lay in leaving their earthly bodies to ascend to a higher existence aboard a spaceship trailing the Hale-Bopp comet. In this episode, we'll delve deep into the origins of Heaven's Gate, its leaders, its doctrines, and the tragic chain of events that led to the loss of 39 lives. This is the story of the Heaven's Gate cult. Our story begins in the early 1970s when Marshall Applewhite, a music teacher, and Bonnie Nettles, a nurse, met in Texas. Both were at a crossroads in their lives. Applewhite had recently been institutionalized following a nervous breakdown, while Nettles was going through a turbulent period in her personal life. The two bonded over shared spiritual interests, particularly their fascination with the idea of extraterrestrial life and biblical prophecy. Together, they developed a unique belief system, blending Christian theology, science fiction, and New Age philosophy. They began referring to themselves as the Two and claimed to be the witnesses mentioned in the Book of Revelation. Their teachings centered on the idea that they were divine beings sent to guide humanity to the next level, a higher plane of existence beyond Earth. In 1975, Applewhite and Nettles began recruiting followers, traveling across the United States and holding meetings. They promised spiritual enlightenment and a chance to escape the destruction they believed was coming to Earth. Over time, their movement grew, and their followers came to be known as the Class. Heaven's Gate's beliefs were a blend of spiritualism, science fiction, and strict asceticism. Applewhite and Nettles taught that human bodies were merely vehicles for the soul, and that the ultimate goal was to transcend the physical world and ascend to a higher existence. Central to their doctrine was the idea of the next level. They believed this higher plane of existence was a literal, physical place, often described as a spaceship where advanced beings resided. To reach the next level, followers had to rid themselves of earthly attachments, including family, possessions, and even their physical bodies. Applewhite and Nettles also emphasized strict discipline and obedience. Followers were expected to adhere to a regimented lifestyle, including a specific diet, celibacy, and isolation from the outside world. They even abandoned their names, adopting unique monikers to symbolize their detachment from their former identities. Nettles, whom the group referred to as T.I., was seen as the more spiritual leader, while Applewhite, or Do, acted as the communicator and interpreter of their teachings. When Nettles passed away from cancer in 1985, the group faced a significant crisis. Applewhite explained her death as a necessary transition to the next level, strengthening the group's belief that physical death was not the end but a step towards salvation. After Nettles' death, Heaven's Gate became increasingly insular and radical. Applewhite, now the sole leader, intensified the group's teachings. He claimed that Nettles was watching over them from the next level and that their mission was to prepare for their own departure. The group moved to various locations across the United States, eventually settling in a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. There, they lived a secluded and highly structured life, dedicating themselves to their beliefs. In the mid-1990s, the arrival of the Hale-Bopp comet reignited the group's apocalyptic vision. Applewhite became convinced that a spaceship was following the comet and that it would transport them to the next level. This belief became the catalyst for the tragic events that would unfold. As the group prepared for what they saw as their final journey, they purchased black uniforms and Nike sneakers, symbolizing unity. They also embroidered patches reading Heaven's Gate Away Team, reflecting their science fiction-inspired worldview. In March 1997, as the Hale-Bopp comet approached Earth, Applewhite declared that the time had come for the group to exit their vehicles and ascend to the next level. The group meticulously planned their departure. Over 3 days, 39 members of Heaven's Gate, including Applewhite, took their own lives in a chillingly organized sequence. They consumed a lethal mixture of phenobarbital and vodka, covering their faces with purple shrouds. Applewhite was among the last to die, ensuring that the group's plan was carried out exactly as intended. The bodies were discovered on March 26, 1997, after an anonymous tip was sent to the authorities. The scene shocked the world, rows of bodies lying peacefully, dressed identically, with no signs of struggle or distress. The group left behind videotaped farewells, in which members expressed joy and anticipation for their journey. They viewed their deaths not as an end, but as a beginning, a transition to the next level, where they believed they would reunite with Nettles and the beings they worshipped. The Heaven's Gate mass suicide stunned the world and became one of the most infamous incidents in modern cult history. News outlets covered the story extensively, with images of the black-clad bodies and the group's farewell videos haunting viewers for years. The tragedy sparked widespread debate about the nature of cults, the vulnerability of followers, and the responsibilities of leaders. Experts pointed to the psychological manipulation and isolation employed by Applewhite, which made it nearly impossible for members to question his authority. Despite the horror of the mass suicide, surviving family members and former members spoke of the love and camaraderie within the group, adding complexity to the public perception of Heaven's Gate. For many, the story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of charismatic leadership and the human desire for meaning in a chaotic world. The Heaven's Gate story is both a tragedy and a chilling reminder of how far people will go to seek purpose and connection. It is a tale of devotion and manipulation, of human vulnerability and the search for transcendence. As we reflect on the events of March 1997, we are reminded of the importance of critical thinking, compassion, and the dangers of blind faith. The 39 lives lost in the Heaven's Gate mass suicide leave us with questions that may never be fully answered. Thank you for joining me in exploring the story of Heaven's Gate. If you found this deep dive compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations of history's most fascinating and tragic stories.